Winter in Vale, Book 5, Pop Goes the Weasel, by Miles Ledoux. Chapter 2. Tricia Sinclair jolted awake as the bus jostled itself into forward motion. Her neck was cramped from sleeping in an awkward position. She winced, stretched, and glanced out the window. Nearby road signs told her the bus had just made its first stop after crossing into Vermont. Somewhere in New Hampshire, the passing wintry landscape had put her to sleep. The Green Mountain State, however, seemed to be thawing. The farther they drove, the less white she saw on the ground. Only one other passenger occupied the bus, sitting farther up front. Tricia wasn't surprised. Thanksgiving week wasn't yet close enough to bring heavy amounts of travel. She herself would have been among the forthcoming mob of homegoers had it not been for the snowstorm that canceled all class days between now and the holidays, affording her a chance to spend some extra time with relatives she rarely saw anymore. Tricia wasn't happy about falling behind in her courses, but as far as public transportation went, she preferred it like this: quiet, less crowded, serene, much like her destination. She wondered how Vale would look when she reached it. Would half the town still have their Halloween decorations up? Was it still warm enough for clusters of children to be out and about on bicycles and scooters? Last time they'd spoken via computer screen, Great Aunt Althea had mentioned heavy snowfall, but the fluctuating temperatures had probably melted it. A crease formed between Tricia's brows at the thought of her aunt. Althea had sworn to Tricia in her last email that she and Delphine were fine, but Tricia was anxious to see for herself. What sort of heartless bastard would break into their house and terrorize two of the world's sweetest old ladies? Apparently the home invasion had been part of some larger, more convoluted criminal plot, but Tricia didn't care, as long as whoever had done it was locked up and unable to cause further harm. Althea had ordered her not to worry herself, but Tricia couldn't help it. She wouldn't be who she was today without her two aunts. Delphine wasn't technically an aunt, but she was close enough. Tricia would only feel at ease once she saw for herself that they were all right. She was so worried she'd almost called him to ask if he would look in on them for her. Almost. Before Tricia fully realized it, the bus was passing through Platt and entering Vale's outskirts. She must have been quite lost in her own head for her not to notice. Then she frowned, pressing her face closer to the glass. This couldn't be Vale, she thought absurdly. This had to be a life-size replica. Sure, all the buildings were where they were supposed to be, all the street names were the same, and there was no mistaking the mountain range on one side. But there the resemblance ended. Even when bad weather forced its people indoors and the streets had little traffic, Vale still had a particular kind of energy Tricia had always felt but never been able to describe. It was an energy that drew her, excited her, made her curious and adventuresome. At one point in her life, it had even made her decide, briefly, to call this town her home. Now there seemed to be almost no energy at all. Wait. There was something. Something that went beyond the dearth of activity that made Vale look like a ghost town. As she observed the patrol cars parked seemingly around every corner, the closed signs on most of the small businesses on a Monday, and the odd face here and there peeking out from behind upstairs window curtains, Tricia knew. Something was happening in Vale. Something wrong. Something frightening. Tricia's theory was all but confirmed when she passed by the school. Adjacent to the slanted row of school buses was an area designated for student pickup by parents or guardians. Today this side lot was gridlocked as far more vehicles than it was designed to accommodate tried to get in and out. Horns honked and blared. Some harried teachers attempted to alleviate the problem by guiding traffic and helping students locate their rides more quickly. Not a single student was leaving on foot. The adults are afraid of letting kids walk home alone, Tricia realized. Her bus pulled up to the station just off Main Street. Tricia moved into the aisle and stretched her legs. Althea and Delphine lived only 2 streets away. She could lug her suitcase that far. Her fellow passenger apparently had no luggage, for he was already disembarking. Tricia drew a sharp gasp. The man had been sitting so far ahead of her she only ever saw the top of his head. She hadn't known. Instantly she was equal parts torn between going after him and ducking down so he wouldn't see her. What could she possibly say to him? She'd considered the possibility of what to do if she ran into him during this trip, but worry over her aunts had overshadowed that concern, or more likely had provided her with an excuse to avoid thinking about it. Seeing him now, she felt she had to at least greet him. Didn't she? If only she could come up with a coherent sentence or two to say to him, But the English language had suddenly deserted her, for he had just seen her. He'd caught sight of her through the bus windows as he walked alongside. He'd frozen mid-stride, his mouth open. Trisha swallowed, waved shakily. Benno managed to give her one stiff nod before he strode away, trying overly hard to hurry without anyone perceiving his haste. Trisha nearly dropped back into her seat, her mortification drowning out the part of her asking herself what Benno had been doing, taking the bus. At least now she no longer needed to wonder what would happen if she bumped into her former fiancé. "Welcome to Vale," said the driver, as a minute later she tipped him and stepped off the bus. Trisha had a fleeting, irrational thought that she should turn around, plant herself back in her seat, and not for any reason whatsoever set foot in this town, that something terrible would happen to her if she stayed. She put the feeling down to her encounter with Benno just now, and ignored the impulse.